Welcome and thank you for viewing the FxPraxis webcast, Introduction to the Mundo, the new international currency index. The Mundo is a synthetic global spot currency index invented by Forex trader Michael Archer in 2001. It provides currency traders the opportunity to work with the composite index, similar to the S&P 500 and Dow stocks. To begin, we will define the Mundo as the unweighted average of the four most heavily traded currency pairs: the euro, the pound, the franc, and the yen. The rules to calculate the present value of the Mundo are quite simple. First, the US dollar must be the quote or second currency in the currency pair. Therefore, the reciprocals of both the yen and the franc must be calculated by dividing the exchange rate into 1. Next, convert all four pairs to pips. Add up the pips, then divide by 4 to get the average. Lastly, we convert the Mundo to a standard exchange rate by dividing by 10,000. Here we have a Mundo open, high, low, close bar chart which covers the time frame January 1st, 2006 through April 14th, 2006. Essentially, it looks very similar to any other bar chart. At the bottom of the chart is the activity oscillator. Since neither volume nor open interest information is readily available for spot currencies, we use the next best thing, the sum of the upticks and downticks during each time interval. We refer to this sum as activity. Mundo activity is the average of the activity for the individual component currencies. The Mundo differential chart is a brand new addition to the technical analysis of spot currency pairs. Its purpose is to determine the degree of divergence that one U.S. major currency pair deviates from the Mundo currency. This particular differential chart applies to the Euro-US pair. This differential chart displays the difference between the British pound US dollar currency pair and the Mundo currency. The points of interest here are the high points and low points in the differential oscillator at the bottom. If the oscillator strays too far from the median line, then a market entry order may be brewing. This chart examines the difference between the Swiss franc US dollar currency pair and the Mundo. Note that because of the Mundo's high parity rate, all of the oscillator values are below the mean of 0. This time we are comparing the Mundo with the Japanese yen. On the far right we see an expanding divergence between the yen and the Mundo. Again, there may be a market entry opportunity here. Transitivity is critical to using Mundo for either relative strength studies for arbitrage. The differential chart is experimental and still requires thorough testing. One observation is that when the scaled major currency pair exceeds an arbitrary number of pips above the scaled Mundo currency, an upward trend is indicated. The converse appears true for a downward trend also. Leader-lagger relationships, also called dominance and dependence, may also be detected by the use of the Mundo differential charts. The composite differential oscillator is an aggregate of the four differential oscillators above. This adds a multidimensional aspect to currency trading, the ability to analyze four or more currency pairs simultaneously. The key factor is to determine which two currency pairs are diverging and at what rate. The Mundo has a great deal of potential as an innovative tool for technical analysis, and we have only begun to scratch the surface. Relative strength and oscillator studies appear to have substantial values for traders. An important tool used by stock analysis is called the beta coefficient. A stock's beta is a measure of the performance of a single stock against the performance of the overall stock market. This statistic assists the investor in the selection of a security based upon the investor's predilection to the risk-reward factor. Typically, stock beta values range from 0.5 to 1.5 or higher. High betas imply greater risk-reward, while low betas indicate that a particular stock is moving laterally and not keeping up the fluctuations of the overall market. For the purpose of this study, we will arbitrarily define the prevailing price of the Mundo as the arithmetic average price of the 10 most frequently traded major and minor US dollar currency pairs. All pairs are treated with equal weight, which means 6 of the pairs must be adjusted so that the US dollar is the quote currency. Using the same rules given above, we sum the most recent values of those 10 pairs and divide by 10 to calculate the current price of the Mundo. We can now use an analogous coefficient to compare the validity of a single currency pair to the validity of the overall Forex market as described in terms of the validity of the Mundo. Spot currency traders, on the other hand, are not buying shares in a corporation or a mutual fund. They feel equally comfortable on either side of a currency trade, long or short. A Forex trade is in fact the simultaneous buying of one currency while selling another currency. Spot currency traders, particularly scalpers, may initiate a long trade, follow a 5-minute rally, liquidate the long position at its peak, and then initiate a short position in the same currency pair and follow that security's decline to the next valley. Therefore, spot currency traders are not particularly interested in the long-term slopes of any currency pair. Instead, they are more interested in the number of significant peaks and troughs that occur during their trading sessions. The standard deviation is therefore employed in our model for Forex beta. A running calculation of this statistic using streaming data informs the Forex day trader which currency pairs are showing the highest validity relative to the whole spot currency market. This identifies the pairs with the highest risk-reward factor. The order of these pairs may change throughout the day as central banks around the world open and close. The following table illustrates the current standard deviation and beta coefficient for each of the 10 currency pairs. During this period analyzed, the Mundo exhibited a standard deviation of 352.70 pips, or 3.53 US cents. Thus, when compared to the Mundo, the Euro-US dollar showed the highest beta coefficient and therefore carries the greatest risk-reward factor. In other words, for the time period examined, the Euro-US dollar was 2.28 times more volatile than the average of all 10 spot currency pairs. The following is the line chart for the Mundo during the same time frame. The first aspect to note is that the Mundo has a lower parity rate than the USD, roughly 53 to 67 US cents. Secondly, slight changes in the same price direction in the 10 underlying currency pairs may cause an exaggerated price change in the Mundo. This phenomenon is also particularly due to the use of the reciprocals in 6 of the currency pairs. The author intends to provide new analysis on the Mundo and daily calculations of the Mundo on the FxPraxis website beginning in October 2008. Thank you and good trading!